I'm Stephanie. I'm a staff design engineer on the data experience team at Visa. And today I'm super excited to share with you all a project we're creating for Visa's innovation centers around the world, visualizing the Ethereum blockchain. So for the next 25-ish minutes, we're going to talk about a few things, right? So first, what is data experience? It's a term we use to describe the combination or intersection of a few related disciplines. Then we'll dive into the project itself, the Ethereum visualizer, from concept to design to a short clip of it playing in our San Francisco Innovation Center. And finally, we'll close with some code snippets to hopefully get you all up and running, creating 3D data experiences using React. So just a show of hands, how many of you have used Vue.js before? Okay, cool. What about React 3 Fiber? Okay. How about for data visualization and sonification? Anyone? Oh, okay. Cool. So hopefully there's going to be a little bit of something for everyone in this talk today, whether you're just starting out or you've used these libraries before. So what is data experience? Data visualization, right? So it all starts with the visual representation of data, whether through standard chart forms like bar charts, line charts, and scatter plots, to more complex representations like Sankey's, network diagrams, or even generative art. However, increasingly, data is becoming the product itself, and we're finding ourselves engaging with our work and our tasks in a much more holistic approach, right? Starting with user research, designing and prototyping in Figma, to developing entire applications that often extend beyond the traditional dashboard interface. So I like to define data experience as the combination of data visualization, product design, and user experience. So here we have three individuals that are really expanding the bounds of data experience today from a creative standpoint, and were hugely influential on the project itself. So on the left, we have Rafik Anadol. Rafik is a media artist. He is pioneering the visual aesthetics of machine learning. And this is his machine hallucinations Coral Dreams, which was actually here on Miami Beach a few years ago. I was able to see this, and when I did, I became untethered to the idea that data visualization, data experience had to be actionable, right? Instead, it could be contemplative. It could bring a technical topic like machine learning to the general public, right? Into the general discourse. Today we hear machine learning, AI, ChatGPT, Copilot, right? But a few years ago, this certainly wasn't the case. Maybe in our smaller tech circles, but definitely not in the general public. And then in the middle, we have Matt Delorier. Matt is a generative artist. This is from his Meridian collection. He also has a great JavaScript library, Canvas Sketch. And he does a lot of educational content online. And it was through these videos that I began experimenting in the overlapping space between generative art and data visualization. And then finally, we have Carney on the right, Carney Klers. Carney is a data visualization designer and musician. This is one of his explorations into data sonification, so turning data into sound. And while this is, sound makes everything better, right? So this is a really big topic in our space, but it's also something we're exploring for accessibility, right? Trying to expand how many people can experience the data in the ways we want them to. So this brings us to the project itself. The crypto team said, we want our clients and colleagues to feel the pulse of the Ethereum blockchain. We have all these great charts, but we want something physically in our offices to communicate how much activity is happening on-chain in real time. So we knew we'd be able to get creative with this, right? First, feel the pulse. Also, the space itself is very open to experimentation. But this is also a challenge, right? This is a pretty wide-ranging audience from clients and colleagues, right? people in the space, people not in the space, people in tech, people not in tech. So finding a way to really speak to everyone that would view these installations. And it became really clear to us in the beginning when we were doing some research, talking to people that are not in tech. They had this very literal image in their mind's eye, when asking about what is blockchain technology, right? Of physical blocks somewhere chained together. And so I saw this great quote: "You can only understand something new relative to something you already understand." And I thought this was really great because, we wanted to lean into this image that they had in their mind's eye and meet them where they were in their understanding and take them along with us. So we had to create a visual language to communicate. So on the left, we have transaction streets, Ethereum transaction visualizer. You can see these are South Park character heads. Those are transactions. And they're kind of hurrying into the buses. Those are the blocks. And they're stacked in a way that you can discern, okay, that's a blockchain, right? Then extending this. So first we have, right, circles, transactions, cubes, blocks, okay, some movement aspect and arranged in a way that people can understand. So then to build on this, right, what if we give them the ability to peer into the buses, right, peer into the blocks? And so we have this Three.js example of points oscillating inside of the outline of a cube. It's a little hard to see. So really giving people, okay, now you can see into the blocks themselves. And then finally on the right, I have some work I did based on Matt's Canvas sketch library, right? So each one of these squares is a block and everything inside of them are transactions. And I'm adding 2 additional encodings here. One is color for the type of transaction, right? So for Visa, it was important to highlight USDC, NFTs, and then everything else. So 3 distinct colors. And then also size, so the amount of the transaction. So now that we have our visual language, we want to turn it into a sensory experience. So some sight, some sound, and some touch. So on the left, I have Kelly Milligan's great tutorial article, Creating the Effect of Transparent Glass. So we're going to use this to peer into our blocks, right? We're going to use this for our cubes so that we could see into the transactions. And it's pretty realistic looking, right? Then in the middle, we have another Three.js example for audio. So these are ping pong balls, and as they hit the table or the plane, right, they release a sound. And so we're gonna harken back to Carney's example, where he uses, as you scroll down the screen, you could hear the data as well as see it. So what we're gonna try and do is as the transactions fill the block, we're gonna be releasing sound. So you could hear the density of those transactions. And finally, I have Bruno Simon, a snippet of his site. How many people know Bruno Simon's work? Yeah, okay. So he's got a really great course on Three.js and React 3 Fiber that I highly recommend. But I included him here because I think his website's a really great example of being able to zoom in, zoom out, mouse around, pan around, really interact in a 3D tactile way, right? So this was the physical space we were given for like our proof of concept version 1 in San Francisco. This is a picture of the digital currency landscape in the San Francisco Innovation Center. It's a 7-panel array of screens and then a big touchpad in the middle. And we were given this pink part, which is the 3 in the middle and half of the 2 on the sides. And this is a little wobbly. But this is a picture of it running live in our San Francisco Innovation Center. You can see how some of the things are kind of coming through, right? This glass cube, the transactions floating into it. When the transactions are in there and the block is validated, it then gets set down on the blockchain. And so as new blocks come in, this kind of pulses, right? And then once you get a sense for, okay, I understand what's going on, right? This is a blockchain. You could then branch out to some of the secondary charts around the centerpiece. It's hard to see, but there's like this blue dot on every chart. So it always gives you that point of reference. So bringing the project to life using Pomandre suite of React libraries. Hopefully I'm saying these words right. They're a developer collective building creative tools, or tools for the creative space. Members include Paul Henschel, who is the creator of the libraries we're going to talk about today. They have a bunch of great libraries. These are just the ones they have extensive documentation for. We're going to look at the top row here: React 3 Fiber, React Spring, and Dre. So React 3 Fiber is what we're going to use to create and manipulate 3D objects in our application. It is the React renderer for Three.js, so anything you can do with Three.js, you can do with React 3 Fiber. Then we're going to look at React Spring. So this will be our animation library, right? Tweening objects from one state to another, from small to big, from this position to that position. And finally, Dre is a compilation of components that are abstractions upon abstractions to make it super easy for us to get up and running. Okay, so let's get started. This is just 20-something lines of code in your app.jsx file, and you're up and running with a cube floating, spinning through space. So let's break this down a bit. So first thing we need is a canvas from React 3 Fiber. This you can think of like a stage, right? And one thing you do is you could set a camera, right? So where you're viewing the stage from. And this is everything we're going to be doing is in a 3D space. So everything is relative to the 0, 0, 0 center point. So everything's going to go inside of our canvas now that we want in this environment. So one of the things you could do, right? So it defaults the background to transparent. So whatever the background color of your application is, this will be as well, unless you set it like using a color, right? Like this. So we could set it and change it to a nice dark blue. Adding lights to the scene, right? Just like it says, right? Adding lights to light up what's on your stage, give it that contrast and dimension and shadows. There's a bunch of great ones. Like if you want an outdoor scene, you can use like a horizon light, right? So play around with those. And then here I've imported orbit controls and stats from the Dre package. So orbit controls is really great for both when you're developing, but also for the experience itself, right? It allows you to move that camera position around in a 360-degree. So you can see your entire scene from every angle. You can zoom in, you can zoom out, all that cool stuff. And then stats. So when we went from developing on our laptops to putting it on those big screens, it cut the frame rate right in half because it was only 30 frames per second hardware. And so for us, it was really important to keep in mind performance as we were developing to make sure we could optimize the experience. There's also a great, if you're into that, you can look into React 3 Fiber Perf library, which is also great. It gives you some more bells and whistles. So then adding the box component itself, right? So this is a 3D mesh, and the mesh takes two things, right? A geometry and a material. So you can think of the geometry as the bones, and the material as like the wrapping paper or the skin. So here we just have a box. This could be anything. It could be a sphere, it could be a car, it could be a bunny rabbit, right? And the material we just have as a standard material with a green color. And then now just to introduce this use frame, right, from React 3 Fiber. So you can use ref, attach it to the mesh, and then access your 3D objects in every frame. So this is how you would go and just rotate the cube every frame. More on that in a bit. So here we're going to start building our blockchain, right? So we need to start by the block component. We're going to just change our box to a block, and we're going to change it just a little bit. So the first thing is swapping out the geometry for a rounded box, right? Giving it a nice curve. Next, we're going to use a physical material with a transmission set equal to 1, and then having that environment component from Dre to really simplify the whole thing, right? I think in our actual project, I use the env property on the material, but this is a really great example of Dre, you can just plug those in and get going. So this gives it a really nice, like reflective, realistic look. And then here's just another material that I wanted to highlight just because I thought it was really cool and I want to try it. So mesh transmission material. So this is built on top of the physical material, but it gives it even more aberration inside of it. So it looks like there's something in there as opposed to the physical material, which is empty. Okay, so here's where it starts to get interesting and also complicated, so bear with me here. So now that we have our block, we got to create our blockchain, right? So the first thing we're going to do, hopefully this runs. It's not going to run. Okay. Okay, so this should be transitioning. My video is not working. That's cool. But so anyway, so we have this big data set, right? And it's an array of blocks. And as a new block comes in, it just gets added to this giant array, right, for simplicity. So, but we can see here we only have 3 blocks on the screen. So we need to go from this giant, array to this smaller one. So as a block comes in, we're resetting the position, the X, Y, and scale for each of these blocks. So as one comes in, one goes out, and we then put that array into a use transition from React Spring 3, and it animates it for us. And yeah, it's really cool. Okay, so here we have transactions. So now that we have our blocks set up, right, we're going to pause the animation that was there that you all saw. I know it. And focus on the transactions. So here we opted for points because they're by far the most performant, at least for our purposes. We were thinking if we have a ton, it's going to be great if we do it as performant as possible. So we went with points. I think Dre has points, but we just opted to do it using Three.js directly here. And so we iterate through each block's transactions, and we're setting some generative positions in the vertices here. So here. So that gives us some of that generative art kind of overlap, which is kind of cool. And then we set it to the geometry, the position, and we return it in this points. And then we would put it into the transactions constant, just like we did with the blocks, so they all move together. Okay, so then adding our additional attributes, right? So we had those points, but now we want to add color and size to it. So first thing, right out of the box, points doesn't allow us to do that, right? It kind of takes in one color and one size. So we had to create a custom shader to do this. We're not going to talk about that today. I still don't understand shaders, honestly, but I got it to work somehow. Matt Delorier has some really great teaching materials on that if you're interested. There's also a book of shaders, some really cool stuff that people are doing with shaders. So anyway, we're going to create a custom shader material. And then we're going to do the same thing we did with positions, but for size and color. And then we're going to set those attributes to the geometry itself. Okay, cool. So I think you'll be able to see the movement here on this one. So now we're going to add some sound. You can use positional audio from Dre, and we're going to drop this right into our points component as well, right? So we're going to have an audio use ref, and we're going to attach it to this positional audio. One thing to note here is that you do need like an initial click from the user to kind of initiate everything. And so you can kind of see, as you can imagine, as these transactions come up into the block, right? So we're iterating using our use frame, we're iterating through it on every frame. And if once they hit that threshold, they're going to release the sound. And you could do some cool things, right? You could set the position of the sound itself. You could set the volume based on the size as well. And you kind of, as you could see there was like 2 different types of sizes, right? So you can imagine hearing, okay, maybe a less sound for one of them and more sound for the other. So what's next, right? So we're in San Francisco's Innovation Center, but we're looking to expand into new spaces, new innovation centers around the world, also online, which is going to be cool. And then looking to add additional functionality. The crypto team has some additional data. They want us to be able to click on a transaction and really drill down into it. So that's going to be fun. And then adding more immersive features. So maybe we can get some touch panels or really enhance the audio, make it like a true installation. So that's it for me. Thank you so much for listening. Please reach out. I'd love to hear from you. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephanie. See, the nerves of